Shalom, Hillel Torah family and friends. Here we are once again, heading into the holiday of Pesach. Hopefully this year, getting together with more family than we have been able to in the past couple of years. What message does Pesach have for us in the times in which we're living this year? Well, when we think about the Seder, one of the climaxes of the Seder is the Bechol Dor Vador, Chayav Adam Lirot et Atzmo Kilu Hu Yatza Mitzrayim. At the very end of Magid, we say the declaration that every year one is supposed to see oneself as if one left the bondage of Egypt. And in fact, according to many commentaries, this is the essence of the experience of the Seder night, to view oneself as if one left Egypt. And the obvious question is, how is this possible? Here we are, 2022, totally different culture, totally different life. How in the world could we see ourselves as if we left Egypt? So many of us reenact, we put on costumes, Sephardic customs, reenact even more, and we do as much as we can to try to relive it. But the truth is, after all is said and done, we're still not exactly reliving it. So what is meant by this mitzvah of Bechol Dor Vador? How exactly are we supposed to fulfill this idea of experiencing leaving Egypt? And when I think about this idea, I'm reminded of a most beautiful and inspiring story that is told by Natan Sharansky in his book Fear No Evil. Natan Sharansky, the famous refusenik, who was imprisoned for many years because of his beliefs and his desire to emigrate from the Soviet Union to Israel. And when he was being imprisoned by his captors, by the judges who were concocting all these crimes against him, and he was being imprisoned, he was being sent away, he turned, his last word as he left the courtroom was, he said to them, "You think that you are the ones who are free and I am the one who is imprisoned." He goes, "In fact, I am the one who is free and you are the ones who are in fact imprisoned." And this actually recalls a beautiful idea that Rav Kook writes many years before in his Haggadah. Rav Kook writes in his Haggadah in Hebrew, Ani Yecholim Limtzo Eved Maskil Sherucho Malei Cherut. We could find a sophisticated slave whose spirit is full of freedom. Ulahefech Ben Chorin Sherucho Rucho Shel Eved. And we could find a completely free man whose spirit is the spirit of a slave. And this is what Natan Sharansky was saying. His captors, you think you're free, you're sitting here, really, you are spiritually, mentally enslaved. While I, although I'm physically being imprisoned, my spirit is free. And he was free to believe what he wanted to believe. Unbelievable stories of him playing chess in his mind for years to keep himself sane. And of course, ultimately being able to emigrate to Israel, serve in the Israeli government. A beautiful, incredible, heroic story. So what we have from Natan Sharansky and Rav Kook is the idea that slavery and freedom are not physical states. They are spiritual states. They are mental states. So whatever is going on around us, a person has the ability, even though we can't control so much around us, we can control how we think and how we feel. And in that sense, we could always be free. So how are we supposed to achieve this on Pesach? I believe that the Haggadah gives us a recipe for how to do this. After all, not exactly slavery, but living through the past 2 years where there's so many difficult circumstances surrounding our lives, often we feel powerless, often we feel a lack of control. How do we reassert that sense of freedom and inner freedom in our lives? I want to suggest that perhaps there are 3 aspects of the Haggadah that help us do this. Number 1, the idea of generosity, cultivating an attitude of thinking about others and going beyond oneself. We begin the Haggadah, Kol dichfin yete v'yechol. All who are hungry, come and eat. We invite others to join our Seder. By inviting others, that is an act of freedom. Only someone who's free can invite others. And in fact, it actually also helps us attain a certain spiritual level of freedom by going outside of ourselves and thinking about others. And that's number 1. Number 2, developing an attitude of curiosity. The whole Haggadah has to be told through She'elah and Teshuvah, the famous Manishtana, that's the centerpiece of the Magid. helps us become a little bit more curious. When we're going through tough times, instead of falling victim to what's going on around us, to actually think and to develop a curious attitude and think, what can I learn from this? Let me notice, what am I feeling here? What am I experiencing? Becoming more curious helps us become more free. And finally, the culmination of Magid with the Dayenu and with the Hallel, developing an attitude of gratitude, of appreciating all that we do have, even during the very, very tough times, appreciating what we have and not taking it for granted. So by acting a little bit more generous, by having a perspective of curiosity, and by showing gratitude wherever we can, we could become more spiritually free, more mentally free, like Natan Sharansky and like Rav Kook were teaching us. And I hope these ideas are something that we can all take with us this year into the Seder to help fulfill this idea of B'chol Dor V'Dor Chayav Adam Lirot Et Atzmo, that please God, may we all this year attain just a bit more sense of inner freedom and inner expression in our lives, both on Pesach and in the months to come. Chag Kasher V'Sameach.